Well, Cape Town's been experiencing adverse weather, causing widespread discomfort and loss for many residents. We witnessed scenes of people battling knee-deep flooding, watching as their possessions were damaged. More inclement weather was predicted for this weekend. It's an added risk for communities, particularly in low-lying areas. It seems more tough days are ahead. To update us on the mop-up and relief operations, I'm joined by Geordin Hill-Lewis, the Mayor of Cape Town. Good evening and thank you for joining us, Mayor. It rained again this weekend as expected. What are you hearing about how this is going to affect mop-up operations?
Good evening. It's nice to join you. The rain that we had this morning was a tiny fraction of the rain that we had last week, Sunday and Monday, when the rain was really torrential. We had a month's average June rainfall in just 24 hours. So this hasn't hampered the mop-up operations all that much. Obviously, in some areas, it will slow it down slightly. And we're just hoping that we'll be lucky with the rain tonight and the rest of tomorrow, that it won't be too bad in those worst affected areas and that we can continue with those mop-up operations through the night.
Just out of interest, does the city work quite closely with meteorologists? Are they sharing these projections, on what can be anticipated weather-wise?
On an hourly basis. We're seeing the weather maps almost hourly and making sure that our teams are ready to respond appropriately if there's any indication of heavy rainfall, and also where that will be in the cities, so that we can check if it's in any of those worst affected areas that you are seeing on screen right now.
So take us into the anatomy of response, Mayor. When you've pinpointed an area, or you know that some areas are going to be at more risk, or some areas have been harder hit than others, how do you typically respond?
We've got huge diesel-operated mechanical pumps that pump water, and we have a whole lot of them around the city. And so they go there. You've got one right now. That's one of the pumps that I'm referring to. And that works 24 hours a day. We've got crews manning those pumps literally through the night. They're currently working on 24-hour shifts. They're absolutely exhausted. And I've spent most of this morning visiting those crews around Khayelitsha and Kosovo and Philippi. And then what they also have is something called a jet vac truck, which tries to find areas where there are still blocked drains and tries to clear those out with essentially very high-powered water jets that shoot all of the rubbish out of the drain and try to clear things out. And so we've got those teams out in the worst affected areas as well.
And they're able to do that quite quickly and effectively?
At the moment, it's extremely difficult because they're trying to do it underwater. So if the drain is blocked, they are literally having to get right down into the drain under, as you said, knee-deep water. So it is taking longer than it ordinarily would in dry circumstances, but they are working really, really diligently to try and get that done.
And these drains, these stormwater drains, are the responsibility of the city to keep clean and clear, right, on a regular basis?
Well, it's the responsibility of everyone, including residents. We do go and jet them fairly regularly. I would like to work on doing that more regularly in the years ahead. And one of the discussions we're having is how to do that with more of those jet trucks. We've just taken delivery of 6 more to try and beef up that fleet a bit more, and we may need many more. But we also, Iman, it's critically important that every resident, particularly residents living here, help us to protect those drains from being used as just convenient disposal mechanisms, disposal chutes, and that they, when they are needed for their intended design purpose to deal with floodwaters, that they are available and open to do so.
We'll talk about the outreach that's probably needed, to accompany that message, to, enlighten people as to why it's important to keep those drains clear. I just want to go back to the maintenance issue, though. Is it being done optimally, knowing you're in an area where there are a lot of people, it's a high usage area, that perhaps it needs to be done on a more regular basis?
The trick is you've got a few months to do it. You've got to do it all between kind of January or February even and May, because by the time June comes, you're already in the rainy season. And if you do it too early, then it's blocked again by the time you get to the rainy season. So this year we did 100 kilometers of stormwater pipe, more than we have done in previous years. But 100 kilometers is definitely not enough. And so one of the conversations I'm busy right now having is how do we increase the size of that fleet, the number of teams that are able to be out basically in that 4-month window before the winter rains, where we can really up that 100-kilometer number significantly.
And, typically, you're talking about, areas. You talked about Khayelitsha, there's Langa, Delft, Masipumalele and others. Again, informal settlements, how often is the rubbish collected there? I mean, is that, these things work in tandem. The community has to do their part. The city has to make sure that this your stormwater drainage system is kept clear in the way that you described, and also that rubbish is collected on a regular basis, even if people are not doing their part.
Rubbish is collected in informal settlements in Cape Town every single week. Some informal settlements which are most dense and where it's difficult for the trucks to get to, rubbish is collected more than once a week, sometimes twice a week. And usually that is done on foot by our solid waste workers who go out and collect rubbish door to door in the council blue bags. But of course it is true that even despite that, there is a huge problem with illegal dumping and litter. And what happens is the wind, then the famous Cape Town wind, blows all that rubbish and it eventually collects in a stormwater drain.
Well, let's hope, Mayor, that in the days ahead, the weather holds up, that these mop-up operations can be successful and that people's lives can return to relative normal. Thank you for talking to us and for the update. We appreciate it. Geordin Hill-Lewis is the Mayor of Cape Town.